Are you ready for high-speed motorsports talk about your local short track? You've come to the right place. Get ready to hear from some of the top stars of Seekonk Speedway right here on the Race Day Rewind podcast series. We'll hear it all, from pure excitement, the disappointment of coming so close, the frustrations of contact on the track, and the thrill of winning a race or a championship. The Seekonk Speedway podcast series is a production of Souza Media. Now let's get to the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Seekonk Speedway Race Day Rewind podcast series. Our Action Track podcast rolls on here in 2022 as we are now 2 weeks into the NASCAR Saturday season. We are approaching our first thrill show and approaching the big start of our Fast Friday series coming up at the end of May. My name is Kyle Souza. For those of you who don't know, of course you heard that in the introduction. I am going to be joined by one of our new members of the Seekonk Speedway team in just a minute. We opened the season back on May 1st. Of course, we had opening day, 4 different NASCAR Saturday winners. May 7th, we were planning on running a NASCAR Saturday show. Unfortunately, Mother Nature picked up the win in the second race of the season. Not a good driver to be in victory lane. However, this past Saturday night, we were back on the track with round 2 of NASCAR Saturday racing. On May 14th, we've got one more round of NASCAR Saturday racing coming up on Saturday, May 21st, before our thrill show for Memorial Day takes center stage on May 28th. And when that happens, the NASCAR Saturday divisions will have the week off. So they're going to have basically 3 races here to open the season, and then they're going to start with a little bit of a break as we get towards the middle of the 2022 season. Of course, this is our Race Day Rewind edition of the podcast, so that means we're going to recap some of the racing action that took place on May 14th. In fact, we will recap all of it, and to do that, we are going to welcome in our first guest of the week, and I believe this is going to be our only guest of this week's edition of the Race Day Rewind podcast. I have faith that our new Saturday night announcer that is joining Kevin Boucher in the booth, Sam Tully, is going to help us walk through what took place on the track. And Sam, first of all, welcome to the podcast series. Glad to have you on board for the 2022 season. Give the fans a quick synopsis, maybe on some of your history here in racing. We've talked a lot as we welcomed you into the team, and you got a cool story here that kind of brings you from your past into Seekonk Speedway's family.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Kyle, for bringing me on board to your podcast here. Really excited to contribute and watch the tale of the season unfold before us. Also really excited to join the team with Seekonk this season. I've been a lifelong fan of racing and motorsports, but certainly my first love was NASCAR. I've been watching it since I was about 11 years old. I'm originally from Taunton, Mass. I've been following it ever since, but my real first experience up close and personal with short track racing was up at Vermont's Thunder Road, where I worked for a summer scoring up in the tower alongside Ken Squire and Tom Curley back in 2016, 2017 era. So that really opened my eyes to the amazing, exciting world of short track racing, and it's been a lifelong mission and dream of mine to just pour my life and energy into this great sport. And I'm really excited that I found a home this summer at Seekonk Speedway, and it's been just so much fun the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, really happy to have Sam on board here, and his background, obviously being in racing, really helps. Of course, Kevin Boucher has been a part of our NASCAR Saturday announce team for longer than I've been alive, literally. So happy to have Sam on board. We also have a new announcer as part of our Fast Friday series that's going to join Kevin there. We'll get him on as we get into our Fast Friday series again coming up in a couple of weeks. But happy to have Sam. And as far as me, you guys here in the podcast have been listening to me for a long time, probably a little bit stale by now. You're sick of hearing my voice. So happy to have another voice here once in a while to help us walk through some of the racing. And, of course, Sam is new to Seekonk Speedway. You just heard he's not really new to short track racing. So he's going to be able to help give us a perspective on what he's seeing on the track here. And let's get to it. Let's talk about the action from May 14th. Let's back up, though, a second to opening day. Sam, we had 4 great races on opening day. Of course, we had Mike Brightman winning in the Pro Stocks. Richie Murray won for the first time in his career in the late models. In the Chaz Auto Body Sport Trucks, it was Mike Caballero, and then in the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Sports, we had Craig Pianca. Let's touch on that Pro Stock race. I mean, you've seen some short track races. That's not accustomed to us. So when you look back at that wild feature and Mike Brightman picking up the win, I know Sam's done a lot of reading and a lot of history on Dave Darling and Dave Darling's dominance here over the last couple weeks. But that must have been, I would imagine you're kind of surprised with how that first Pro Stock race panned out based on what you've heard about in these divisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's opening day, so maybe opening day jitters. Maybe that's a little bit of a factor. Everyone's antsy. They want to get the monkey off their back and make sure that they start the season off on a strong foot. But yeah, ultimately it came down to just some craziness, really all down there in between turns 1 and 2 on a couple different occasions, right? Unfortunately, you had some torn up race cars early on. Tom Scully Jr., the one that comes to mind earlier in the race. And then ultimately, Dave Darling, you mentioned, he did what I feel like he had to be in there towards the end. And ultimately it came down to just 3 cars battling for the same patch of pavement and it not working out and it flipping the running order pretty much on its head. So pretty crazy way for the season opener in Pro Stock to end up.
Yeah, and of course Mike Brightman picks up the win there. Let's touch on the Pro Stock division from May 14th before we go any further. And unfortunately, there isn't much to touch on here with the Pro Stock division. Mother Nature won that race too. We had some weather that we knew was coming as part of this show, so we moved it up half hour. We started with the Troy City Tactical Spectator Tags. It was John Johnson. Spectator Drags, John Johnson picked up the win there to open the season. We started half hour early. Knew Mother Nature was kind of looming, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Every other race but the Pro Stock getting in. As soon as the Pro Stocks rolled on the track, Mother Nature won the battle, and unfortunately did not allow us to compete in the feature race. So unfortunately with the Pro Stocks, they only ran 2 heat races. Tom Scully Jr. picked up the win in the first heat over Dave Darling. Ryan Vaness was third. Mike Brightman, Colby Fournier, and Kenny Spencer in that one. The second one, Tommy Adams won over Ryan Lynham, Bobby Pellin, Mark Jennison, Rick Martin, and Danny Tebow. Tommy Adams, of course, was really quick on opening day. Contact between he and Mark Jennison sidelined him for the rest of that race. He had to go to the rear, racing for the win there. So he's going to be strong. Pro Stocks are going to be back as we roll into 2022. With the May 21st event. That'll be their second race of the 2022 season, and we'll see what happens. Mother Nature hopefully not going to win that one as well. The Pro Stocks kind of got the crap end of the stick on this one, to be honest. Nothing really that anybody did to cause it, just Mother Nature not really working out and giving what we needed, which would have been literally probably 15 minutes more of weather that was raceable. And so be it. Obviously, it does happen, and we'll move on from the Pro Stocks and get them back on the track this Saturday night. Of course, Dave Darling is going to be a threat. We mentioned a bunch of the other guys that are going to be threats, so I anticipate that division to roll well coming up this Saturday night. And, all right, let's go back to some of the other racing that did happen on Saturday. We'll start off with the Chaz Auto Body Sport Trucks. And Barry Shaw picks up the win in this one in round 1 of the Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown. Fitting for Barry Shaw himself to pick up the win in this race, since Everett's Auto Parts is the sponsor of Barry Shaw. We're also happy to welcome them as the sponsor of the Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown Series for the 2022 season. And Barry had a great race. Sam picking up the win. Of course, our defending champion in this division. And week 1, he had speed, not quite enough to go up there and contend for the win. But we get to week 2 here, and Barry was pretty much the favorite, and Rick Martin also competing with him over the second half of that race. What did you see there? Because Martin, I mean, he gave it everything he had on the outside. Of course, 100 wins now in Seekonk Speedway history for Rick Martin. Picked that up last year, and did he give him a run. Just not quite enough there to get the win at the end.
Yeah, that battle between Shaw and Martin really raged on for the overwhelming majority of the race. Once Barry was able to clear Amy Arsenault, it was clear that he was going to be setting the pace. And ultimately, Rick Martin was able to get around Amy, and then it was just a matter of, can Rick Martin make the outside line work around Barry Shaw? He had nose advantages quite a few laps going through 3 and 4, coming off a 2. A couple times, I thought Rick Martin was going to make the outside momentum work, but ultimately Barry's truck just was stout enough to make that bottom line work to pull off the win.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, of course, as I mentioned, the defending champion in this division. He's no slouch. He knows how to get around the third mile. Been racing for many, many years. And Rick Martin, you mentioned, he used the outside lane. Just not quite enough. I mean, there's no real other way to say it here. It's just not quite enough for Martin on this night. Of course, a lot of these drivers have that new style truck for 2022. And, in fact, the top 5 finishers have that new style truck. And Barry, of course, came out last year really strong at the beginning of the year. Kind of blew everybody away for all intensive purposes in the first couple of weeks of the season. And as the season went along, some of these other guys caught up to him a little bit, but not quite enough to stop him from winning the championship last year. And he comes out strong here in 2022. Of course, a new format with the championship battle. But Barry picks up the win in week 2 for the trucks. Rick Martin was second. Mike Duarte won to touch on here as well, finishing in the 3rd position. Now, Mike has 2 podium runs to open the season in his brand new number 50. So he's got 2 top 3 finishes. That's impressive in its own right for him to come out and be this consistent in the early running of the season. So he's going to be one to watch as we get into the summer months. 4th position was Mike Caballero, of course, the week 1 winner behind the wheel of the number 80. And Brittany Campbell rounded out the top 5 in the number 8. Of course, Amy Arsenault, we had talked about in the last edition of the podcast, went out on opening day and led the whole race until something broke on her truck. She was sidelined with basically 2 laps to go in the lead. And this week she comes out, leads some laps at the beginning of the race. She was actually had to go to the rear after some contact where she spun around on the back straightaway. And then she gets involved in a couple other melees in the middle of the field with some contact, has to go to the rear again. So Amy had a tough night. She was able to come home 9th in the number 9, but not what she was really looking for either there. So we'll see if she can rebound in the coming weeks. Of course, again, that was round 1 of the Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown for the Sport Trucks. We have that Final 4 format for the Sport Trucks in the Phil's Propane series in previous years. Now it's the Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown series. We'll have that Final 4 format again. And it's Rick Martin also finishing in 2nd position. That's off to a good start there. But Barry Shaw automatically enters the Final 4 in the race for the Triple Crown. So that's going to be something we'll monitor as we get into the middle of the season. Want to give a shout out to Rick Alvernez as well, finishing in 6th position in the trucks this week. A nice field of 16 taking the green. We will see what happens to them as they move to next week. Let's move on to the late model division. 30 laps in their 2nd race of the season. And Sam, you've done a lot of history and reading up on the history of Seekonk Speedway. I know that for a fact. Jerry DeGasperi Jr. is a name I'm sure you know pretty well by now. 7-time late model champion. And he was the dominant force, my friend, on Saturday night. There wasn't anybody, it looked like to me, right from the heat race. I think it was pretty clear that Jerry had a good car and finished 2nd in his heat. And he comes out of the feature and puts a buck kicking on the field for all intensive purposes.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. Jerry was definitely setting the pace from lap 1. Had to fend off some early challenges from that white 35 car of Chase Belcher. But ultimately, it was really just Vinny Arnagato, of course, our reigning champion from last year in the late model division, who was the only one who was really giving DeGasperi Jr. A run for his money, really right down to the very last lap. So it was the 71 and the 17 that were at the point really all night in that late model feature.
Yeah, and I mean, Jerry's, again, a 7-time champion, no stranger to the front of the field. Vinny's struggled here, in my opinion, the first couple weeks, and I think he would kind of agree. I heard him say at the tech inspection right after the feature went off, we're getting there. And for Vinny to say we're getting there is kind of rare. We're used to him coming out of the box here strong and being a winning car right off the truck. I don't think he was a winning car in week 1. I think he would agree with that. He struggled as the defending champion to get his feet wet and get rolling here in 2022. In week 2, kind of a different story, for him to come out here and start pretty close to the front. I think he was in the 3rd or 4th row when they dropped the green flag and get up there to 2nd. He didn't have quite enough to get Jerry and contend for the win. However, in my opinion, not the start that Vinny Arnagato wanted. I know his standards are very high, of course, coming off the championship last year. He wants to win, and he wants to win often And we'll see how it goes as they get into the middle of the season on if he's able to rebound and get a feature win here pretty quickly, or is he going to kind of be the bridesmaid here to Jerry or to Richie Murray? What is this season going to be for Vinny Renegado? I'm not sure, and of course everybody's not sure yet, as it's only week number 2. And I don't want to overreact. I'm not coming out here and saying that Vinny Renegado is struggling. He's not got a chance at the championship. That's far from true. He is still the favorite to me in this division that they're going to have to beat in order to win this championship. But second place, still a decent start to the season to get a 7th and a 2nd in the first 2 weeks. Richie Murray was 3rd, and Sam, amazing start to the season for him in that green and black number 08. Of course, he came out in week 1, led most of the race to pick up his first career win. And what are you seeing from him here to be able to have some consistency, which is important as we get into the beginning of the season to come out and get a couple strong runs to start the year?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that Richie Murray, of course, is a one to watch this season. He had good success last year when he made the jump up into the division, but to be able to come out and win the season opener. But what impressed me the most this week is, he started 11th on the grid when the green flag waved this past weekend. And to work his way past drivers like Jacob Burns, Jeremy Lilly, Hedges, Belcher, Jennison, Flood, Duarte, to be able to pick those guys off over the course of the feature and end up in 3rd place, I mean, that just says a lot to do it cleanly and to, get your second top 5 finish in as many weeks. He certainly knows how to get through this pack of strong drivers, and he's certainly going to be one to watch as the season continues to unfold.
Yeah, Richie's been strong in the first couple weeks, and we'll see how he shakes out here as we get into week number 3 this week. The late models are going to move on to Saturday night, where they're going to have round 1 of the Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown. 45 laps for the late models this week, and that's a long-distance race, and really one of our... In fact, that's going to be the longest race of the season so far. I know we're only in week 3, but across all our divisions, that'll be the first time we go long distance. We've had 35 lappers, of course, in the Chaz Auto Body Sport Trucks and the Helger Sportsman this week in the Everett's Triple Crown. But the late models are going to do it themselves this coming Saturday night for 45. So, again, Jerry DeCaspari the winner, Vinny Renegado 2nd, Richie Murray 3rd, Chase Belcher was 4th, and 5th place was Josh Hedges. 2 top 5 finishes for him to start the year. Richie and Josh, the 2 drivers that have been inside the top 5 in both races. So, we'll see if they're able to keep that streak going in the 45 lapper coming up this week. Both of those drivers usually fare pretty well in the long distance races. And based on what we saw from Richie, as you mentioned, Sam, I think he's going to be a contender as we move into the extra distance because of the speed we saw in just a 30-lap race. And he's got 15 more laps to get to the front. So we'll see how that shakes out as they move on to their 35-lap feature coming up this Saturday night. We had one more race on Saturday, May 14th, that we want to cover. That's the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Sportsman Division. They were in round 1 of their Everett's Auto Parts Triple Crown Series. And, of course, we talked about the Triple Crown Series, kind of really just a second incentive here for these drivers to go out and chase over the course of the season. And 35 laps for the Sportsman on Saturday night. A great start to their Triple Crown Series and a little bit of a rough and tumble race at times in the middle of the field. When you're talking about 21, 22, 23 cars on the track at once in a Sportsman race, it's hectic out there and there's going to be some contact. There was a lot of contact. And as of the moment we record this podcast series, the results are still pending. So depending on when you're listening to the podcast, they're still looking over the inspection results from Saturday night. So I can't give you the official finishing order. But the way they crossed the field at the checkered flag on the track was Ed Perry picking up the win, Adam Petty 2nd, Vinny Pangolin in 3rd, Craig Pianca 4th, and Sparky Arsenault was 5th. Now, again, I said the tech results are pending. Don't take that as though the top 5 cars were cheating. I'm not saying that. But the inspection results are still pending. So we will see what happens over the course of the season to see, really over the course of the next couple days, to see what the final results of that race are going to be. Check out our Facebook page. Check out our website, depending on when you're listening to this. Again, if you're a little bit late on listening, you may know what happened already. But if you don't know, check out our Facebook and our website to see who the winner of this race was. Besides everything else, I think there were a couple stories here to touch on. Sam, number 1, the biggest story for me, Chad Baxter spun. Probably about 12 to 15 laps to go, somewhere in there. Had to go to the rear. drives back up there to finish 7th, but that's a big deal. The defending champion, top 5 week 1, finishing 2nd, and I think, Sam, this might be one of the first times you've seen this now go down where he is really able to tear through this pack, like butter on bread. I mean, he is just incredible with what he's able to do to get up through some of these guys.
Yeah, Chad was doing what he had to Saturday night to make a good run and have a solid finish. He was working his way up close to the top 5, and then he was making solid progress until on the front stretch, diving into turn 1. After he had completed a pass, it looked like he lost power for a couple seconds there. Ultimately got it fired back up and rolling right away, no yellow or anything like that. But it cost him 3 places, which again kind of just set him back in the pack and ultimately ended up spinning. So, if he doesn't have that small hiccup on the front straight, who knows? Maybe he avoids calamity in that spin and ends up with a strong finish. But it wasn't what was in the cards for him this weekend.
Yeah, and I have to go back and see, and I'll check on this here and report back in the next edition of the podcast. We have this rule in place now with our race director, Len Ellis, where if you make contact to pass a car in front of you, you have to give up 2 spots and give them back. And in a weird way, I almost think that's what happened when you say it looked like he lost power, because I thought the same thing watching the race live. I'm like, wow, something happened to Chad. He's off the pace. But it kind of looked to me like maybe that was the case. Maybe they penalized him a couple positions. Again, I'll find out the details on that and report back on next week's edition of the podcast. But no matter what, he's still able to finish in 7th. Doug Benoit was 6th in this race. I'm going backwards from 7th up, apparently. And Doug's a former Fast Friday Pure Stock champion in our Helger's Pure Stock division. Very impressive run for him. Was up in the front the whole race. A strong contingent of top finishes for him here in the Sportsman. 6th place, I think that's his best career Sportsman run. Sparky Arsenault was 5th. Led some laps early. One to watch here as a former champion of this division. Kind of ran sporadically last year and coming back this year on a more regular basis. I don't want to say a regular basis because we don't know exactly how many races that he is going to run in the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Sportsman. However, an impressive start for the Saturday night feature, at least, to be able to get up there and get inside the top 5 and compete well and finish in 5th. 4th was Craig Pianca, our week 1 winner, rebounding into the top 5. Vinny Pangolin in 3rd, a fantastic run for him. Not somebody we usually see in the top 5, so happy to see him there. And then, of course, our top 2, Adam Petty and Ed Perry. Again, pending results on the Sportsman as of the moment we record this. Again, when you're listening to it, I don't know. Check us out on Facebook. Check out our website, and you'll have the full details on the Sportsman finish. But no matter what, Helger's South Coast Power Equipment Sportsman, round 1 of the Everest Triple Crown, 35 laps, is in the books, and a great one there. 21 cars took the green flag. Great to see. Again, if you forgot about the beginning of the show, you're waiting for a Pro Stock recap. There was none. Mother Nature took control of that race here, and unfortunately that one did not happen. Now, before we, close this edition of the Race Day Rewind, I want to preview what's coming up this coming Saturday night. 45 laps for the late models in round 1 of the Everest Auto Parts Triple Crown Series. Should be a good show there. We will have the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Sportsman back on track for a 25-lap race. We will have the Chaz Auto Body Sport Trucks back on track for 25 laps. And the Pro Stocks for 40 laps. Sam, is there anything that stands out to you here as we move into the 3rd race of the season? Is there something that you're going to be watching coming this Saturday night? Is it that Pro Stock race to see if the wildness continues? Is it something else? Is it the truck division to see if Amy Arsenault can get back to the front? Is there something you kind of got your eye on here moving into race number 3?
Well, how much time do we got here, Kyle?
There's a lot of things, right?
There's so much to watch across these 4 divisions. Obviously, really excited to finally see our Pro Stocks get back out again this weekend. It's been 3 weeks. It's felt like 3 months, but really excited to see if they can get back on track and have a clean, cohesive race. There's so much exciting stuff to watch, but just because it's up on my screen here, the Sportsman Division, for what it's worth, and if I may, I thought that was the race of the weekend this past weekend. Because the division, especially on this past Saturday, it was just full of so many comers and goers, if you will. I mean, for the first half of the race, maybe not more, you had Sparky Arsenault, Doug Benoit, and Don Perry basically in the top 3, like leading the race. And then when you look where they finished, Sparky 5th, Doug Benoit 6th, Don Perry down in 13th. And so it was those accumulation of cautions that really lent to the advantage of people like Craig Pianca, Vinny Pangolinan, Adam Petty, Chad Baxter to work their way up. Ed Perry, of course, who started closer to the field than some of those, but was ultimately able to capitalize. So it'll be really interesting to see, if one of these sportsman races goes not cautionless, but, maybe just 1 or 2 or 3 cautions, does that limit the opportunity that some strong drivers who are limited by the handicap, are they not able to capitalize and move up quicker? Are some of the drivers who start closer to the front, like Doug Benoit or Arsenault or Don Perry, able to capitalize with a top 5 finish or maybe even a win? So that was just something that stuck out to me when I was rewatching some footage from last weekend with the Sportsman Division, is just how much churn there was in that top 10, even when it was just down to 10 or 5 laps.
Yeah.
So,
It's a very valid point. Of course, our Sportsman Division sees a lot of turnaround as we go across the total distance of the season. I think we're going to see more and more and more and more of that as the 2022 season rolls along. We do every year, but you make valid points. Some of these guys that finished in the top 5, we're used to seeing there. Others of them we're kind of surprised to see there, and that's a good thing here early in the season to see some new names up at the front of the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Sportsman Division. I agree with you on the Sportsman Division. They continue to put on pretty much one of the best shows in New England. I've attended a lot of tracks in my lifetime, and it's pretty impressive what they're able to do. So shout out to those drivers there. Sam, before we go, what about the truck division? I mean, you got 2 races here. Barry Shaw winning and Mike Caballero, the 2 winners so far. I look at names like Amy Arsenault, we talked about, Brittany Campbell, Mike Duarte, Rick Martin, and really Jake Venata too, as guys and girls that I could see getting out there and getting the first win of the season. This is going to be, I think, one of our more competitive divisions here in the trucks in 2022, where there could be 5, 6, 7 different winners pretty quickly here. I could see 7 different winners in the first 7 races if it pans out that way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I really love this truck division. I think it's so cool that we have this here at Seekonk. I don't believe, at least I don't think, that many other tracks like Seekonk have a specific truck division. So I really like watching these trucks go around. But yeah, there's still a lot of drivers that we have yet to see exactly what they have. I think they're still trying to feel things out, especially, one pops out to me, Jake Venata. He's had a couple of rough and tumbled weeks, to say the least. I think he's going to be a strong driver as the weeks roll on. So definitely looking to see him be a contender. You have Rick Alvernez, who I believe started last when the green flag waved for the feature, was able to work his way through the field of 16 all the way up to 6th. So clearly showing that he knows how to work his way through a pack. Brittany Campbell, who I've been able to connect with and talk to the last couple of weeks pre-race, she just said that in order to get the job done this season, just needs to make sure she's hanging around there till the very end and putting in solid top 5 finishes week in and week out. She's been able to do that so far the last 2 weeks. Mike Duarte, of course, 2 third places the last couple of weeks. So all he needs is something to go his way and to make something happen to get a win for himself. And of course, Amy Arsenault, again, another victim of kind of a couple turbulent weeks. I think it's only a matter of time, sooner rather than later, before she starts to finally have a cohesive weekend and string it all together and get a really favorable result for herself as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of storylines in this division, and I think the thing that we'll end with here is there's storylines in all 4 of our NASCAR Saturday divisions, and the only way you're going to know what's going to happen, well, there's a couple ways. Number one, you can listen to us on the podcast. I always suggest that. Why wouldn't you want to come and listen to our recaps of the show? But number 2, come on out to the track. I mean, get your tickets online, SeekonkSpeedway.com, and come check it out. There's nothing like in-person racing in short track racing. A lot of you listening to the podcast are probably members of the track in one way or another, whether you're on a team, a driver, a fan, but some of you listening may have never been to the track, and we encourage you to come out and watch some of the racing this Saturday night. Give it a shot. May 21st. Racing begins at 6 p.m. Our front gates open at 4 o'clock. $15 for adults to get in the gate. There's really no affordable family fun that is going to be that cheap, especially in this economic market. So come on down and join us for a Saturday night. We, of course, got May 21st with our NASCAR Saturday program. No Fast Friday this week. That starts up next week. So we look forward to having our Fast Friday drivers in town on May 27th for the first time. Check out some of our Fast Friday preview podcasts that are going to be coming out next week. Of course, we'll have our preview podcast, and we'll have the preview write-ups that we always do each year by Souza Media. I'll be writing all that up and look forward to getting that out there into the world next week as we preview the 2022 Fast Friday season. There's a ton of storylines there, all the way from our Seekonk Youth Racing Association divisions all the way up into our Pure Stock and Next Pit Stop Legend Car divisions and our Sport 4s. So looking forward really to seeing that go down here on May 27th. May 28th, of course, we'll have our big thrill show. The Memorial Day event opens 2022 thrill show style at Seekonk Speedway. That is one you are not going to miss in 2022. Come on down and join us on May 28th for that. And then we'll get back at it in June with a busy month of June. Fast Friday on Fridays, NASCAR Saturday on Saturdays, and at the end of June, the Tri-Track Series comes into town for the annual $10,000 to win Open Wheel Wednesday on Open Wheel Wednesday. That is June 29th. So mark your calendar now for that. Again, all of this information available at SeekonkSpeedway.com. You can also visit us on our ticketing platform there, where you can buy your tickets online, whether for a specific night or a flex ticket, which is a cool opportunity as well that we've welcomed into 2022, where basically you can buy a ticket to a NASCAR Saturday show, just not a specific one, and you can come anytime you want for that. So much going on here, and so much to look forward to as we get into the middle of the season. Again, Sam, I want to thank you for coming on board here on the podcast series for the first time. We're going to be hearing Sam's voice more and more in 2022 as we welcome him into the racetrack family here and the podcast series. And Sam, look forward to seeing you here again this coming week and getting some more insight from you here as we move along into the next couple weeks and we get down towards this championship battle, which is going to be exciting in the middle of the summer and right up until we crown the champions at the end of September.
Thanks so much. I can't wait. Really looking forward to it.
All right, that's been Sam Tully. Thanks for him for joining us here. I am Kyle Souza, again, the owner of Souza Media. Visit Souza Media on Facebook as well. You can check out all the action that we've got going on with some of our clients, whether you want to talk about racing here at Seekonk, racing at some of the other tracks in New England, or some NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour racing, some tri-track racing, all kind of racing you can find there. But also, don't forget, SeekonkSpeedway.com and our ticketing platform on there as well. And our Facebook page is constantly updated as well, so check that out. Want to thank everybody for joining us on this week's edition of the Race Day Rewind on the Action Track podcast. No breaks this week. Sorry about that if you needed a breather. But we had some great conversation with Sam. Really want to thank him for joining us here on the podcast and 30-something minutes long recapping May 14th events. Again, check out our podcast series as you already have here. Check out some of our other ones. And we look forward to seeing you at the track here. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you at the Action Track of the East. Bye-bye now.